here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Ian, how you doing, man?
Hey, what's up, Mike? How you doing?
Everything is good. You get a chance to see Tom Brady in Philadelphia. It should be fun, this Eagles team. I guess if you're doing study and prep work for them, they have no identity. Have you found that out as well?
Yeah, that's a fairly good place to start. I had the game a couple of weeks ago against Kansas City, so I feel like I got a front row view of what they're all about. Watched the tape last week, and you see the makings of something. There are definitely fragments of positivity with this team, but the totality has not convinced anybody yet that they can be a legitimate player in this NFC playoff race. I think Nick Sirianni clearly came in with a plan and with a philosophy, and I do believe he's a very positive guy. I think he has brought that with him to the facility day in and day out, and guys are buying into it, but there just hasn't been enough consistency and sustainability so far in the young season to say, oh, yeah, they've got it going in the right direction.
Now, you said you had the chance to see them against Kansas City, and in that game, their defense, gave up a touchdown every single time they were on the field. And John Gannon's defense was much maligned. They gave up 83 points in the 2 weeks against Dallas and Kansas City. Then last week, they stepped up and basically won them that game. So what did you see from the defense as to why they struggled? Because I thought, and it was very interesting, that Tony Dungy the other night when Buffalo's playing Kansas City said, they're playing the right defense, cover two, safeties back, which is essentially what the Eagles did. So why didn't it work for the Eagles, but it worked for Buffalo?
Yeah, let me also mention, Mike, that I never had to say the name Aaron Sipos or Tommy Townsend during that game. Literally.
Have you ever called a game with no punts?
Yes. I mean, that's an NFL record-setting day. You tie a record of another NFL game without a punt. Look, I think there were a couple of things going against them that game. Kansas City was certainly angry after their performance from the previous week. They were building up towards something. You saw the big plays, the chunk plays later in the game. So they did establish the run in that game. And then, as we know, Mahomes began to pick Philadelphia apart, other than the one interception. They were getting pretty much whatever they wanted, and they were getting it on the outside. Tyreek Hill was a complete menace for Philadelphia, and they did control the line of scrimmage, which was a little bit surprising. Philadelphia, I thought, was a much better effort against Carolina defensively up front, and we saw some signs of life from Fletcher Cox, who's been such a high-level performer for so long. He just had not really been making a whole lot of splash plays. Javon Hargrave has been great. Their secondary came through last week. It did not against Kansas City. And I think they're better than their numbers would indicate defensively. I have to believe that. I believe this scheme is better, and I think their players are better. There's a lot of rotation, though. That's the one thing that struck me. They're playing a lot of linebackers. They are rotating in and out, and that's all well and good, but I haven't seen enough standouts where they've got to at some point make a decision on what their personnel is going to be and probably stick with it.
Ian Eagle, Westwood 1, he'll call the game Thursday night. You said, Nick Sirianni. What kind of vibe, what kind of, feeling do you get from him? This league is going with these young guys. He really had no track record. There wasn't much on him. So when you get a chance, you got a chance to sit down with him a couple of weeks ago. When you get a chance to sit down, presumably you maybe already did. What kind of vibe does he kind of come off? As a confident guy, a guy trying to find his way? What do you get from him?
Very likable. You wouldn't walk away from sitting down with him and not feel why he's progressed through this career of ultimately becoming a head coach. He knows his stuff. It's got a little bit of that Sean McVay. He started reeling off moments, and he knew and kind of thought that I had done the game and threw it out there. He's like, yeah, I remember a game, San Francisco against San Diego. It was a Saturday night. Phillip Rivers. I was like, no, I did that game. He goes, I thought you did. And he just then went chapter and verse, specific plays, exactly what they did, play after play after play in the fourth quarter of that game. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I remember none of that. I remember making my red eye after the game. That's what I remember. So I think a lot of these younger guys have been brought up in that culture where you must know your stuff and chapter and verse, and you've got to be able to recite it and recall it. And that's not to say Andy Reid couldn't do the same thing. I'm sure he could, but that generation wasn't flexing it like that. They were moving forward a lot and trying to come up with the next game plan. I think Nick is taking all of his experiences as being the son of a coach. His two brothers are coaches. This is in his blood, and he eats, breathes, and lives it. And at some point, there probably will have to be more of a balance in what he does, and probably deploying some others to do some of the things that he should not be worrying about.
Now, is that something, Ian, you sit down with him and say, hey, man, I called a game for you recently, and you ran the ball 3 times. I've never seen that before. Can you extrapolate a little bit more on that?
I do not. I don't tend to give my opinions in those meetings after doing this.
Well, maybe not so much your opinion,
years.
just, hey, I'm calling a game in which you ran the ball 3 times. Like, that's a first for me.
No, that probably wouldn't come up, but you never know. There could be a back and forth down the road.
Well, in a situation, you've now called a game with no punts in it, and the team ran 3 times. Has that ever happened before where you called an NFL game that had 3 rushes?
Was that the game? No, they had more than 3 that game. That was the previous game, wasn't it, where
after?
Sanders had it? Yeah, I think Sanders only had the
Gotcha. All right. So it was the Cowboys game. Yeah, yes.
Exactly.
So he followed it up with 9. He followed it up with 9. He went from 3 to 9. All right.
Trust me. If it was 3, I definitely would have remembered that, even amidst all of this information circulating my brain with all the games that I do over the course of the week between NFL and NBA. And this, Mike, is always one of those fun times of the year when I'm just getting into the NBA, and I know that I'm going to have a ridiculous amount of information. So I just don't want Tobias Harris catching a touchdown tomorrow in the game I'm doing. That basically becomes my challenge.
Well, if Goddard's out, Tobias might play tight end, so we'll find out. Ian Eagle is with us here. Now, in that game, it was in Philadelphia against the Chiefs, and now you're back here in Philly. Give me your thoughts on Jalen Hurts and sitting down with, and like, what kind of aura does he kind of portray? Because everybody you talk to is he's an unbelievable leader. That's like the first thing that comes out of everybody's mouth. But how like impressive of a young man is this? Because nobody seems to have an opinion yet whether he's the guy. Can he be the guy? I don't know if he's the guy. What do you get from him?
Really confident. That comes across right away. He emanates that when you meet with him. He looks you in the eye. He locks in on the answers. He's thoughtful on his answers. I can feel that presence that you're alluding to, that guys would follow him, that this has been something that he's been building up to. Also the son of a coach, and gave a lot of credit to his dad for teaching him about the game and being around the game as a young kid. High school football, that's all he knew, being in locker rooms, being on the sideline, visualizing what it was going to be like when he got his chance, and obviously what he did. A classy guy, how he handled himself collegiately in the switch and the transition at Alabama, and then moving on and becoming a star at Oklahoma. And I think you nailed the last part of it too, which is the jury is still out. There are certainly moments where you say, oh boy, he can run this offense. He can handle it. He can navigate his way through it. He can lead. And then there are some moments where you think, I don't know. Is he going to be the guy? Can they put to rest any idea that they have to address the quarterback position down the road? They obviously really liked what they saw last year from him, from how he committed himself to the position, how he connected with his teammates, how the whole vibe around the team changed when he replaced Carson Wentz. But that's got to translate into wins. And it's really interesting, just breaking down the numbers. He has thrown for 300 yards now 4 times in his career. The Eagles have not won one of those games. So the success they've had is when he's been a dual threat. Mm-hmm. And when the numbers are not eye-popping in the traditional sense, when he's doing a little bit of everything. And if you're the Eagles, you do have to be cognizant of that he's probably at his best, not just as a typical drop-back passer. You've got to design a lot of the run-pass options for him and trust his instincts in these moments.
It's amazing, Ian, that in these first 9 games of his career, he is 5th all time in NFL history for total yards in 9 games. 5th. So he's putting up numbers, he's doing things, and it feels like people just can't figure out quite who he is yet. Now, on the other side, we know all about Tom Brady. So if you could, through your illustrious career, give us some sort of insight on getting prepared to cover a game that involves Tom Brady.
He's just so thorough in everything that he does, even in the meetings that we've had through the years in New England and with Tampa Bay last year. He comes fully prepared. You're never going to rattle him. He is always under control in what he's saying, how he's saying it, how he's presenting it. What I did find, obviously, over time, once there's familiarity, he would allow the veneer to go down, and there would be some more real honest and frank moments where he would tell you what he sees and why he sees it and why he did what he did. And that takes time. That doesn't happen in the first go around. I had him one of his first games as a starter in New England when Drew Bledsoe went down. I remember going in there and meeting with him and thinking to myself, man, I don't know if this guy's going to be any good, but boy, he's ridiculously affable. And I think there's something there. There was just a charm that he had, and obviously it translated to the umpteenth degree as one of the greatest leaders that we've seen in football history. He holds everybody accountable, and he has a very high standard. He expects everybody else to maintain that standard as well. And I think because of that, guys on his team don't want to let him down. And that's been the case from iteration to iteration. Every team that he has played on, not saying the Patriots and the Buccaneers, I'm saying every version of the team, no matter what the players are around him, they want to do well for him. That says a lot about him as an individual.
Yeah, and that team is interesting because obviously you're seeing a guy at 40 years old still playing. Like when you see him and walk in, do you feel a guy who's not at the end of the road, even though at some point he's got to be at the end of the road, right? I mean,
it's insane. Truly, when you really think about it.
Like if you're talking to like Peyton Manning at the end, Ian, you're like, okay, I kind of see like this is almost done for him. You don't feel that for Brady?
No. And again, just my own personal experiences. The first game I did for CBS, first NFL game, was Peyton Manning's first game as a pro. Indianapolis against Miami, his rookie year, week 1. He walks into the meeting room. He knows my name. He looks you in the eye when he answers it. It's the first interview that I did as a CBS broadcaster with an NFL player. And he walked out, and I was like, man, that guy was really impressive. I guess, wow, we're at a different level now. And I realized quickly that, no. I'm not at a different level. It's just that guy's at a different level, the presence that he had. But at the end of it, yes, you could feel it. You knew it was the end of the road. You don't feel that with Tom Brady. And you know what's really crazy when I think about it? This probably happened 5 years ago. I was doing a Patriots game with Dan Fouts, legend, one of the best quarterbacks in NFL history, tremendous guy. And he and Tom had a really nice bond. Tom grew up in the Bay Area. Dan was doing local sports after he retired in the San Francisco area, had a tape of a walk and talk with Tom Brady as a high school senior, the two of them doing an interview and a sit down, and brought it one day and played it for Tom, and Tom was blown away. So I don't know, Dan just asked him kind of offhandedly, like, hey, man, how long do you want to do this already? You've accomplished everything. This is before he had gone public with his intentions. And Tom said, I'd like to play till I'm, 45, 46. And we laughed, like literally laughed out loud. Dan starts laughing. I'm laughing. I'm kind of reading the room, and Tom was not laughing. And he looked at us. He's like, no, I'm serious. And then we quickly realized, he is serious. And by the way, he's doing it.
Yes.
So it teaches us a lesson.
Well,
don't laugh at Tom Brady if he's not joking.
No, and it's a tremendous thought of I can't picture a league with almost without him. Even though you know it's coming, you just don't know when. Like, is he playing at 49? Is he playing at 52? Like, and like you said, you can't even joke and ask him because like he's just going to give you some cerebral like answer. Although, do you feel in Tampa he has let the guard down a little bit?
Oh, most definitely. What I'm seeing now is what I saw in those production meetings towards the end of his tenure in New England. The last 3 years in particular, I would say, he let his guard down, at least with us, in those meetings where we got to see the real version of him. And now he's showing that more and more in interviews that I've seen, in press conferences, and commercials. And I think that was part of the issue maybe in New England of the way they went about their business. And when he would push the envelope a bit, boundaries, and maybe it was frowned upon, even though he was Tom Brady, that might have been, along with some other issues, why he decided to move on in his career and try something new. And by the way, he had the right to do it. And clearly he was in the right because he led him to a Super Bowl title and he still got the it factor. Happy that New England found their quarterback and they feel good about that. That might end up working out for them. But what Tom Brady did was still the right move for him. And I don't think it should affect anything in terms of the relationship with the fans that he had in New England and the media and all of the Patriots supporters. To me, he did everything right for a long time there.
Ian Eagle, Westwood 1, Thursday Night Football. Do you have a favorite encounter, like a favorite Brady story that like you tell often when you get asked about him? I feel like he's such a unbelievable sports figure, but the fact that we're living in the moment, it's hard for us to realize it. I think we'll realize it even more when he's done, but is there like that one go-to Brady encounter for you?
Yeah, I told one fairly recently on a podcast that got a little bit of attention, and I had no intention of telling it. It just popped up late in the podcast. I have no problem sharing it again, only because it was comical and it was real. So as I explained, when I'm doing NBA and NFL and the two seasons now conflict, I'm really pushing it over the course of the week. Sometimes there could be 4 NBA games and there could be a Thursday night NFL game and a Sunday NFL game on CBS. And I had one of those particularly crazy weeks, and I had a net game on a Friday night. It went to overtime. I got home late. I had an early flight to Boston to make our production meeting in Foxborough. And I get there at about 8:50, and Tom Brady's going to meet with us at 9 a.m., and I had nothing to eat. I hadn't had dinner the night before. I get there. I'm beat up. I look like crap. I hadn't shaved, obviously, and I just need something. And the Patriots brought in donuts for us, Dunkin' Donuts. And I like a good donut, don't get me wrong, but I went to town on this donut. And I don't drink coffee, so I've never had a sip of coffee in my life.
Wow.
And I'm looking for something to drink, so I go into the little media area by our room, and there was a large bottle of Pepsi. So I grabbed the bottle of Pepsi. I take a swig of that. I've now chewed up half of the donut as Brady walks in the door, and I have icing on my face. I look like a mess. And he says, rough morning, Ian? You doing all right? I'm like, yeah. So there's a huge Pepsi, half a donut. He's like, what's going on here exactly? I was like, oh, and I try to start explaining, no, this is not my normal breakfast. And he just crushes me. Like, really? Are you making good choices in life? And this was not part of the TB12 method. Let's just leave it at that.
Tremendous. Ian Eagle, Thursday Night Football, Westwood 1. They'll have the call. Ross Tucker, I believe, is your partner for Thursday night.
RC.
I will ask, since you are the lead voice now for the NBA, are you looking forward to a Sixer game and getting this Ben Simmons thing put into your lap here?
I have a Sixer game early. I have a game next Friday.
Yeah, you got the Knicks,
Sixers. Right? No, Nets and Sixers.
Oh, Nets, Friday night the 22nd.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. It's on Yes because you're doing the Nets. I'm looking at your TNT stuff here. All right. That's right. You're doing the Nets games. So that game is very interesting. You got Ben Simmons going on. He might be there. He might not be there. You got the Kyrie stuff. I mean, you got a lot on your plate there.
Yeah, the goal in the NBA, as you know, and this is true in any sport, the goal is to not lead the league in drama. And you've got the Nets and the Sixers right now neck and neck in that category. So at some point, this will come to a head with Philadelphia. And clearly, Ben Simmons has made it known through his people that he doesn't want to be there, but he also wants to get paid. And the only way to get paid is to be present and to be there and to report, which he has done. But it just sounds like the lines of communication have completely broken down. The Kyrie situation, they had to come out and take a stand, the Nets did, in order to move on and take the next step. There was no way you could allow it to linger every day and be a question for your head coach, for your players. And now the ball is in Kyrie's court. He's going to have to make a decision in regards to his vaccination status. And if his decision is to not get vaccinated, then he will not play for the Nets this season. It's pretty simple.
Were you at the game Monday?
No.
All right, because I was going to say, I think Simmons might have been texting you to let him in the building.
Side door, right? In between plays, I could have opened it up for him. I know. It's a pretty wild situation.
The great Ian Eagle, he'll call the game for Westwood One Radio, and, of course, the Eagles and Bucs right here on 97.3 ESPN. Ian, we appreciate you jumping on board. Always fun, man.
All right, Mike. We'll do it again down the road.